were forced to leave their land as European settlers came into America.
The name Missouri was named after the Native American tribe Missouria. The Native American tribes Ottolini, Iowa, Osage, Quapaw, and Missouria all lived in the territory of Missouri. About 10 to 9 million Native Americans were living in America when the Europeans came to Missouri.
Some Native Americans had to migrate to different parts of the land.
America was founded many years ago. Christopher Columbus found America in 1492 by sailing from Italy in 3 boats. A lot of Europeans left their homeland to find a new land in America. For the next 100 years, more and more people kept coming to America. Europeans started building houses, cities, and towns. They mainly lived on the East Coast. Missouri was not yet a state. There was still a lot of undiscovered land. This led to many years of exploration.
The French explorer Marquette and his crew traveled along the Mississippi and around it. Joliet was a Canadian explorer that was born in Quebec City and also explored the Mississippi River area. Marquette and Joliet and 5 others almost traveled to the mouth of Arkansas, but they stopped because they were warned of hostile Indians and Spanish explorers.
De La Salle traveled all the way down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. The explorers are important because they taught us information we didn't know about the unknown land, and they also found a quick route to Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd president of the United States of America. During President Thomas Jefferson's term as president, he purchased the Louisiana Territory, which doubled the size of America. President Thomas Jefferson wanted to know more about the land he just bought, so he asked Lewis and Clark to explore the new territory. Sacagawea helped along the journey, all while caring for the son she bore just 2 months before the departing. She was important because she was an interpreter and could help the Native Americans and explorers communicate on their journey.
1 year after the United States doubled in size through the Louisiana Purchase, Lewis and Clark started their 2-year expedition near St. Louis, Missouri. They traveled up the Mississippi River in a keelboat. They traveled for more than 8,000 miles. They had to push up the river with long sticks in the keelboat. It was very hard to do. When they reached Fort Mandan, Lewis and Clark traded their keelboat for 6 canoes. They traveled the remainder of their trip to the Pacific Ocean in their canoe.
Their job was to document new plants and animals they saw and created maps. Lewis and Clark identified 178 plants new to science, including bitterroot, prairie, sagebrush, Douglas fir, and ponderosa pine. They also saw many new animals. One animal they saw was a prairie dog. In fact, the explorers poured the water down the prairie dog's hole. The prairie dog came out of its hole. The explorers killed the prairie dog, stuffed it, and sent it back to the president, where he put it on his shelf. Their expedition is important because it paved the way for our future pioneers to settle the new land.
The Oregon Trail was a route to the west and was part of the westward expansion, where people settled in the Louisiana Territory.
The people who traveled on the Oregon Trail were called pioneers.
The reason why people traveled on the Oregon Trail was so they could have more farmland and a new civilization.
The reason why Kansas City was important during westward expansion was so the pioneers could stock up on supplies before heading west.
The Oregon Trail was a very hard route for the pioneers. Life was hard and lots of people died from infection. There were lots of buffalo and Native American attacks because of the U.S. government pushing them onto the Trail of Tears. The pioneers had to circle their wagons to protect the pioneers.
The gateway to the west is now known as the St. Louis Arch, or Gateway Arch. It wasn't there at the time of the Oregon Trail, but was later built as a symbol to remember the Oregon Trail.
The Missouri Compromise allowed for Missouri to finally become a state. However, in order for Missouri to become a state, a major compromise had to happen.
At this time, the country was divided between slave states and free states. The 11 free states and the 11 slave states both wanted to have another state. If the Missouri had entered as a free state, the North would have control. If the Missouri entered as a slave state, the South would have control. The North and South could not agree which they should be. Something had to be decided. The Missouri Compromise allowed for the Missouri to enter as a slave state and Maine to enter as a free state. This allowed for the balance of power to remain between the North and the South. Slavery illegal in the Louisiana Territory, north of 66 degrees 30 minutes latitude line. The Missouri Compromise was important because it created the great states of Missouri, and the North and the South remained in balance of power. The Native Americans were the first people to live on the land we call now the United States of America. It was a long time before the Europeans discovered our land. At first, the Native Americans and the Europeans got along. They helped each other by teaching each other to hunt, farm, and gather food.
However, things started to change. The Native Americans became unhappy because the pioneers were pushing them off their land. They began to fight. The United States government did not like that the Native Americans were fighting the pioneers, so they began forcing the Native Americans to live on their reservations. The difficult and deadly journey to the reservations is known as the Trail of Tears.
The Missouri Compromise made Missouri a slave state, meaning they could own slaves without getting into trouble. Slavery was different from slavery in the Deep South because many people in Missouri thought that slavery was wrong. Slavery in western Missouri was often just as brutal as slavery in the South.
Shortly before the Civil War, the southern slave states seceded from the United States. They formed the Confederate States of America. As a slave state, Missouri had to decide if they wanted to stay in the Union or leave and join the Confederacy. Missouri was a border state. That means that it was in the middle of the free states. In the slave states, they decided to stay in the Union. Their decision to stay with the Union was a benefit to the North because it had lots of supplies and good helpful things like horses and food.
Dred Scott was a slave living in Missouri with his owner named John Emerson, which was a slave state, so it was okay to have slavery. Later, he moved to Illinois, a free state, with his owner John Emerson. John Emerson wanted to go back to Missouri, and Dred Scott refused. He felt like he was a free man because he was living in a free state. Scott sued Emerson in hopes of being free, but decided that Dred was still a slave because he was not an entire citizen. The Dred Scott decision was a landmark case that sparked even more conflict between the North and the South. The issue of slavery, a major cause of the Civil War.
Missouri was really important in the Civil War because of all of its resources. Lead and iron were resources that Missouri had and were needed by the North and the South in the Civil War to build cannons and make guns. Because of this, both the North and the South wanted Missouri on their side.
Corn, pork, mules, and livestock were some of the useful resources in Missouri. Because of this, both the North and the South wanted Missouri on their side.
Missouri was one of the few border states and sent many men to the armies on both sides. About 1,000 men fought for the Union, while about 40,000 served the Confederacy. They fought in both Missouri and other states. Many battles and skirmishes were fought just in Missouri. Missouri sent armies, generals, and other resources to both sides during the war. Missouri was represented with a star on both flags for the North and the South. Missouri maintained dual government, and often neighbors would fight with each other because of their differences in opinion.
Some of the battles fought in Missouri during the Civil War include Battle of Boonville, Battle of Carthage, Wilson's Creek Battle, Battle of Lexington, Battle of Lone Jack, two battles in Independence, and two battles in Westport, Battle in Liberty at Blue Mills Landing. In fact, William Jewell was used as a hospital and a stable. The hospital was in the dorms when it wasn't a college. National Cemetery in Missouri was the only place where North and South soldiers who fought in the Civil War were buried side by side. Knowing that Missouri fought for both sides, had two governments, and had many resources useful to both the North and the South, we have a greater understanding of the importance Missouri played in the Civil War.
The history of Missouri and many Missourians have played an important role in the creation of our state. It has led to many great things in our state today. There are many attractions to visit and many famous people who have lived in Missouri.
Harry Truman was the 33rd president. He was from Lamar, Missouri. He was known for leading our country through the end of World War II.
General Bradley is also a famous Missourian who led the U.S. Armed Forces at the Normandy during World War II.
Other famous Missourians, including Walter Disney, Mark Twain,
Alexandria Donovan,
Jesse James,
Daniel Boone, William Clark,
Dred Scott,
White Cloud, and Sacagawea. Some Missouri sports teams include St. Louis Cardinals, Kansas City Royals, Missouri Chiefs, and Sporting KC. Missouri is also home to this Epic school and is actually called Epic Elementary.
St. Louis is a very large city, and in St. Louis you can visit the Magic House, City Museum, and the St. Louis Arch.
Branson is a very fun place to visit. In Branson, you can visit Silver Dollar City.
Another place you can visit is Kansas City. In Kansas City, you can visit the Kansas City Zoo.
Missouri's rich history and culture is for everyone to enjoy.